what? A digital, a website? You want us to consider that towards scholarship? And what they didn't get was we weren't talking about just changes in the content, but also changes in delivery and different approaches to audience. And they just didn't grasp that. So as much as, I applaud that idea, it's really hard to implement in programs. And I'm in a program where about a third of the faculty are now engaged in the public history program, and I still have to fight these battles on occasion because, and it's not that they disapprove of public history at all, but they are quite skeptical of the type of scholarship that public historians produce if they're not in the traditional form. And this isn't just about public history. I mean, there's a national debate going on right now about open access to dissertations. Once again, and a lot of people disapprove of the idea of dissertations like my university immediately posts them online in digital form. Anybody can go look at a dissertation. The student has no control over whether that dissertation is available or not. It's just out there. And there's some anecdotal evidence that presses don't like that they're not going to produce your book because your book's already been on the web, right? And so these new methods of delivery, particularly digitized methods, are really posing a lot of questions in academia.
And I guess my experience is the same, that there's, the report we're talking about got a lot of traction. We hear a lot of anecdotal evidence of people using it, showing it to their deans, their department chairs, people embracing it, but then when it comes time, it always comes down to the book or a few key journal articles. And I just saw a case where the chancellor of the university, the dean, all talk about, the whole university talks about civic engagement. A faculty member convinced, well, the history department has embraced public history for many years, and when this person came up for tenure, the department supported them, but it was a promotion and tenure committee within the school that is made up of 4 or 5 people from other disciplines who don't necessarily care about public history or have even heard of it, and all they cared about, they were the gatekeepers, and they are, they're in this gulf between the history department and the administrators, who both seem to support it, but there are gatekeepers along the way. And for them, it was about the book and the cutting edge research, and it was a shock and surprise to everyone, yet a shock and surprise to no one. And that's despite this person being hired as not only a public historian, but their title is public scholar.
Yeah. But I hope that doesn't dissuade you.
Oh yeah, don't be.
Because, I mean, I have sat on one of those middle level committees before and had to deal with one of my colleagues going through. And it's usually, and it wouldn't surprise me if there wasn't an advocate on that committee, somebody to explain what public history is. And that's, oftentimes departments or colleges don't pay attention to that, and then somebody comes up and has no one on the committee who can really identify the discipline, And there's plenty of smaller disciplines, smaller fields in other disciplines as well. So that when I'm sitting on a committee and I get, somebody from, I don't even know, social work, microbiological social work or something, to make up something that could never exist, I need it explained to me, and I need to understand the type of scholarship appropriate to it. And so, I don't know the circumstances here, but from my own experience, at any level, you, as the person moving up, should always find an advocate to help you through the process.
Ultimately, what's at stake there matters not just for public historians, but it matters for the relevance of any discipline within the university in an age where it's no longer sufficient just to publish for other scholars. So, this is a battle that people within history departments are facing, but the idea of engaged scholarship and civic engagement in other disciplines is something universities need to deal with and grasp across the board, because it matters that we have a public role that receptive to the communities that we're interacting with, and not just the students and other scholars, I think. So.
And if we could have a feel-good moment about public history, because this topic always raises my anxiety a little. I've heard from several academics in other disciplines that have cited public history as really advancing these conversations about civic engagement in other disciplines.
Heather?
Hello, I'm Heather Fox. I'm an archivist here at the University of Louisville, and when you were talking earlier about sort of the market being flooded by public historians and people getting jobs, that relates completely to the archival field, where, you know, within library science, being an archivist is a very exciting sort of sub-career, and I can think of at least one information school that has dramatically increased the number of archivists that they're churning out, but they're churning them out to a terrible job market. And so my question is, like, you know, as the head of a program, like, how do you deal with the tension of like an ethical responsibility to not churn out too many grads up against maybe an economic imperative to let a lot of students into your program because it's popular? I was just wondering if you all could discuss that a little bit.
I am always honest with a prospective student. And, you know, there's only so much we can do as a program. And, you know, the flip side of it is, if we don't allow a certain number of students into the program, then what are they going to do? Okay, as students, they have a passion for going out and being history makers in communities. So their alternative is to go to another program that may not offer them as much in the way of finally getting a job. And so I'm always honest with a student. You know, the job market stinks. And I get on the internet with students, prospective students, and say, let's look at the jobs that are available right now. And are you certain that this is exactly what you want to do? And which field do you want to go into? And I go through all of these steps with every student who applies to our program. I'll call them. You know, I just think you can artificially limit the number of people who go into the market if we want to do that. But I'm an advocate of trying to make people's aspirations happen for them. And so while we have and our only limitations are the resources in our department. You know, we only have so many classes. But we would certainly try to produce as many as we could if that's what they want to go into. I just have a problem saying I'm the one who gets to decide what your career is going to be.
Can I just add to this discussion, which is to say, you know, I think John touched on this earlier, but even though historians have not looked very broadly, at least in the United States, for opportunities outside the academy or outside public historical institutions, the skills we have are very, very relevant for lots of different fields. It's very, very difficult to predict the job market, especially when you're talking about a graduate program that's admitting people that are going to finish 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And I think that if you don't give people opportunities, they'll find them somewhere else. But if you train people in ways that prepare them for the kinds of opportunities that we know about now, but also give them good communication skills, critical thinking skills, everything that serious historical study does, they'll find opportunities for themselves, even in a bad job market, even if it takes a while. And, at least in my experience, as in working in public history institutions, if you give people those skills, they can progress within institutions in a way that people that have less developed skill sets may not. So, you know, there's no guarantees, but I think we can make the best possible pitch forward. And I think ultimately the fact that the historical profession is beginning to look more broadly about not just, you know, the career you go for if you can get a tenure track job from a PhD program, but, you know, one that's perfectly viable, probably challenging, almost certainly more remunerative. You know, I mean, we have a lot to gain by opening up things and looking beyond the kind of established boundaries we've had for a long time.
Dan took the words out of my mouth, and I like to think of my work as training cultural workers, and the idea that the skills that my students are gaining can transfer to a lot of different professions. I think the burden then becomes on enculturating students the ability, enculturating students in the ability to verbally and in written forms convey what they've learned and how it translates into other positions. So I would like to see the values and tenets of public history spread out into more cultural work. I think the questions of authority and civic engagement, I would like to see in every aspect of cultural work. And I think as long as students are able to communicate those broader skills that they've received in the ways that they connect with the jobs they're applying for, that helps us get them out into those professions.
It was the universal claim, definitely, and I will say that the program that I went through used to, but because of the recession, because of just a lack of opportunities, a lot of these assistantships are more teaching, grading papers, but the practical, the hands-on, that I've known people who, we'll guarantee you an assistantship. When they get there, we're like, well, actually we ran out, but here, find a work study position.
Right.
Answering phone calls.
I mean, there's so many pressures to make this all about me, on me, as a director of public history, right? I mean, I have a handful of teaching assistantships to give out to students, but I can't set the terms for the assistantships. My university does, and has told us we can only use university money to increase numbers of undergrads taught. So they have to be teaching assistantships, right? So, and that's the case in many schools where the university dictates the use of the university money. And so, you know, the primary way in which my students get their practical experience is through an internship. We've increased the number of hours for the internship. It was 150 when I started. It's now 250 hours, or 240 for an internship. And you know, I wish everybody had this advantage, is, as I alluded to before, I'm in a situation where all of these institutions around me, you know, where our alums work, will take on students in voluntary positions, part-time positions with extremely flexible schedules, because they know these students need to do whatever, right? And so all of our students leave with plenty of small practical experiences here and there. Some of them paid, a lot of them not. But that doesn't, you know, as I tell them, if you want a job, the money doesn't matter right now. Right. So I'm not an advocate of accrediting programs. I think that will pose a big professional problem down the road. Because schools that don't get accredited aren't going to shut down programs.
They'll call it something else.
Yeah. Well, they'll call it public history. I mean, you can't stop them from calling it public history and keep training students.
And I agree. I don't think the credentialing or accrediting programs or certificates is going to go anywhere. Something that NCPH is trying to do is just cast more light